My name is Young-Suk Yu, Principal Research Scientist of KIST, Korea Institute of Science and Technology, and I'm very glad to be a chair of this session. The title of this session is Mainstreaming Gender into Asia-Pacific's Research, Innovation, and Development Goals for More Effective and Sustainable Outcomes. Therefore, this session will highlight the different circumstances of national research and innovation systems in countries and regions in the Asia-Pacific. We have renowned experts from 14 countries around the Asia-Pacific region. Those 14 countries are, in alphabetical order, Australia, Bangladesh, Cambodia, China, Indonesia, Japan, Kazakhstan, Korea, Mongolia, Myanmar, Pakistan, Philippines, Singapore, and Taiwan. The Asia-Pacific region is, as you well know, very large, dynamic, and complex. In terms of the latitudinal region, it spans from north of Mongolia to south of New Zealand. Also, it is very dynamic and complex in many fields. That means the capacity, potential, as well as attitude to advance gender innovation differs from country to country. Differences in cultures, women's status, stages of development, as well as R&D investment levels make for the rich tapestry of situations. The aim of this session is to share experiences and resources prompting multinational collaborations on advancing gendered innovation in the region and with the rest of the world. Delegates from the 14 countries will give a snapshot of their own countries' or region's perspective on mainstreaming gender into their national research, innovation, and development goals. Both gendered innovation and equal gender representation in STEM research will be discussed. Before we go on, let me briefly explain about the format of the session. In order to keep our time schedule, I'm going to allow all talks to happen first and then question and answer discussions afterwards. Since we have 14 exciting talks to go, I'd like to cordially request to the speakers to limit your talk within 7 minutes. So don't worry, after 6 minutes, I ring the bell. Then you have to wrap up your talk within a minute or so. And I will keep the order of the talks as shown in the program. And my Miss Henrietta Dale will serve as a rapporteur of this session, and thank you very much. Now, let me invite the first speaker, Dr. Jennifer Graves from Australia. She is a distinguished professor of life science. I don't know, I can pronounce exactly, La Trobe University. And Dr. Graves will talk about science in Australia, gender equity. Please.
Thank you. You may not know, but my research is on sex. And it was my graduate student who first discovered the sex-determining gene SRY. And I'm famous, or maybe infamous, for my observations that the Y chromosome is disappearing and will be gone in 5 million years. But my interests are also through the Australian Academy of Science and my relationship with the L'Oreal UNESCO Awards. And today I want to specifically ask the question, well, what can academies of science do? So in Australia, it sounds as if we have a paradise for women. Most women work, including mothers, and gender equality in paper is mandated. And there's strict procedures for promotions and for appointments. And maternity leave is nearly universal. So you might think you can have it all. And this is a picture of a recent paper that we had in Nature, which was very high profile, had the cover. And the first author is a young postdoc called Claire Holili. And here is a picture of her with the Nature cover in one hand and her newborn baby in the other arm. So you think, well, you can do it all in Australia. This is a complete myth. Unfortunately, the maternity leave for Claire didn't happen, and we had to pay her from the grant, which means she no longer has a job. So we still have a long way to go in Australia to make life friendly for female scientists. And here is a familiar scissor diagram in Australia. So you can see that although we start off with equal numbers of PhDs, it diverges, and we have very few senior women in science. So it's really very similar to all the other countries we've been talking about in Asia. And the reason is not hard to discern. It's largely the problems that young women have, particularly when they have families. It's just too hard to keep going. There isn't the support to keep going. So the Australian Academy of Science, these are objectives, and all of them have to really relate to all scientists and all citizens. So all of these demand equal participation of women in science. So what can we do? Well, first of all, we had to get our own house in order, because as you see, the proportion of women we elect to fellowship has miserably low. 4% for decades and decades. It got better in the 90s and 100s when I was elected, and we have spent a lot of time debating how we increase this. We have finally done it by a mixture of a very high-profile committee who goes out and finds women and insists they get nominated and tracks their nomination, and also the directive to the discipline committees that they must, if they want to shortlist 3 candidates, one must be a woman at least. So that's where we are now, and you can see we're doing a lot better. So what are we going to do for the population of Australia? We have a new initiative called SAGE, which is what I said in my title, which is Gender Equity in Science in Australia. And we're hosting this with a very high-powered steering committee. And that's terribly important. It's chaired by 2 very high-profile academicians, Nalini Joshi, who is the chair of the Mathematics Union, and Brian Schmidt, who just won the Nobel Prize last year. And that was very important to have a man and a Nobel Prize winner on our side. And so what we did is to gather many leaders of policy in universities, research institutes, in the government, and funding groups as well, and industry together to identify the critical issues and gauge the opinion of different sectors on what to do to counter gender inequity. And this forum, which was last November, came to a unanimous decision that urgent action was required, and we voted to trial the Athena Swan scheme. And this was a scheme that was developed some years ago in the United Kingdom and seems to really work. So here's the SAGE pilot. It starts right now in August this year. We advertise for universities to sign up for it, because what this scheme tries to do is to put the onus on institutions to clean up their act and make life better for women, and then examines what each university does in policies and practice and rates them as bronze or silver or gold. And that has really worked very well in the United Kingdom. I was quite surprised and very, very happy that all the universities wanted to be a part of this. So I think that's very encouraging, that they all really want to do something, but they don't know what to do. So we can help there and tell them what they should do. So we hope that this is going to help institutions to achieve very good practice, and that they can learn from each other how to do it, and also learn how helpful it is to have more women on the staff, more talent. So what we're hoping eventually is that it will become mandatory for institutions to achieve a gold award before they get grant money. So an example of best practice is the famous Walter and Eliza Hall Medical Research Institute that has already got very, very high-powered fellowships for a woman to set up a lab, has got many awards for childcare and support, particularly for travel and for conferences, is very careful about equal representation on committees and so forth, and institutes a stop clock so that women have longer to be judged. And most importantly, it has very strong support from the director. I also want to just very quickly tell you that we believe that gender education starts very early, and the Academy runs very successful primary and secondary education systems. This is our primary education system. It's in 75% of Australian schools. It really works. It uses the 5 E's, that is, engage and explore the topic before you explain anything. And what we have done is produce a whole suite of little booklets, and as well as a very considerable training program for the teachers. This works. The students are all engaged, hands-on, everybody has a role. They actually wear little badges saying manager or director or reporter. And we have done a lot of work to see whether this works. As you can see, the Primary Connections is blue. It works for everybody, including girls and boys. So we know that this is a good scheme, and we think it's really helping. My conclusion is that academies of science can be effective in, first of all, mobilising stakeholders and reforming education, and then defining and enacting best practice in universities and research institutions. So all is not lost, and I think it's not that complicated. Thank you.